Chapter 1830. Powerful Alien Mind Master. Yang Xinshin's ability can ignore defense and directly act on the alien itself. Demon God B is also a living being, but most of his body has been transformed into machinery, but his core must be affected by the alien power. Therefore, if we can cooperate with Mirana's ability to seal his body, and then let Yang Xinshin use his ability on him, wouldn't it be easy to take him down? There are no weak abilities, only weak aliens. Even Yang Xinshin, who has just broken through the Ypsilon level, no, even the previous Yang Xinshin, her rule-based arrows can pose a fatal threat to powerful beings. So, we must first confirm whether Mirana is still alive. Yang Xinshin said lightly, the most powerful alien in Fremons. How can it be so easy to die? What's more, she is an alien of the ice and snow system, and she is simply the darling of the world in this era. After the discussion, Zhang Yi decided to leave immediately. The plan is very simple. First, go to the battlefield and observe whether Mirana died in battle. If all three giants died in battle, come back immediately. If Mirana died alone, there is no need to continue fighting. Zhang Yi's ability to save his life is the best in the world, but it is too difficult to kill Demon God B by his own strength, so there is no need to take such a risk. Second, Mirana is still alive and has the ability to continue fighting. Then cooperate with her and let Yang Xinshin use her ability to control Demon God B, so that you can easily win. The plan is very good, but what will happen when you really get to the battlefield is still unknown. But as long as you have a firm belief, once the situation is not good, you will run away immediately. Then please believe that Zhang Yi's ability to escape and self-protection is absolutely the best in the world. Zhang Yi is too stable. Even so, he still brought everyone in the team because maybe there will be a time when they can be useful. He first went to find Bodaka and asked for the god of death of love. At this time, 5 minutes had passed since the signal on the battlefield disappeared. Bodaka's face turned green. This may be a bit troublesome. Please go to the battlefield first, and we will never break our promise when you come back. Zhang Yi smiled, and then shook his head slowly. No. Just kidding. What if I go there and find that Mirana is dead, and you come back and refuse to pay? Who can I go to for justice? Bodaka gritted his teeth. Okay. I'll take you to get it. The launch chamber is located deep underground in Samran City, which is not a problem for Zhang Yi at all. Soon they arrived here and directly put the god of death of love placed in the secret depths into the other dimensional space. Lord Chaos, can you go out? Bodaka's eyes were red at this time. Because of excessive anxiety, he was already angry, and his urine was yellow at this time. Zhang Yi patted his shoulder and comforted him. Drink more chrysanthemum tea to relieve the heat. After that, Zhang Yi opened the dimensional door in front of him and disappeared directly on the spot. Karen City is more than 1,000 kilometers away from Samran City. After all, the battle at that time scared the courage of Fremons' senior officials, so they fled far away. This distance is not too far for Zhang Yi, and it only took about 5 minutes to get here. People were still 100 miles away from the battlefield, and they could already feel the fierceness of the battle. The two armies' bombardment had ended at this time. The army had used up all its ammunition, but because the war was not over yet, it was still on standby. But Zhang Yi could clearly see the thick snow fog in the sky, which was like ice cream. It was the vast ice and snow raised by the huge storm, spreading in the sky, forming an extremely gorgeous and magnificent landscape. The battle of the Ypsilon-level aliens was so shocking. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, and he could feel the energy fluctuations that erupted over there. As he expected, the strongest man in Fremons would not die so easily. After the end of the world, those who have survived to this day and reached the level of white bishops are all geniuses who can only be born once in hundreds of millions of people, and people with excellent luck. If it was so easy to die, they would have died in countless battles in the past. Zhang Yi opened the dimensional door and moved in that direction. As a bishop-level space alien, he was very good at hiding his breath. As long as he did not expose himself, it would be difficult for ordinary people to discover his existence at this time. Zhang Yi approached the battlefield, and with the help of the spying function of the intelligent system, He saw the demon god be in the sky with thousands of daggers floating around him. And dozens of kilometers away, a sound like thunder roared continuously. Zhang Yi turned his sight and saw two old acquaintances, Alexei and the moon god Giselberg, fighting fiercely with a big man-made man. Their fighting style was extremely violent, and they were all simple and direct close combat. The giant axe and scimitar chopped on the armor of Karag. The collision of pure power made a sound like a mountain explosion. The shock wave alone could set off a violent storm. As for the goddess of winter, Morana, Zhang Yi could not see her figure. Because the whole land was covered with howling ice storms, and the strong winds turned into huge tornadoes, falling from the sky to the earth, and the height was probably thousands of meters, like an extremely thick white pillar falling from the sky. There was a lot of solid ice in the storm, and Morana was among it as expected. This was her means of attack and defense. Zhang Yi was far away from here, so he didn't rush to attack. Since he was here, he would first appreciate their performance. This was also to better observe the fighting style of Demon God B and judge his strength. Demon God B did not find Zhang Yi's existence. Space-related aliens are best at hiding themselves. When they are on the road, they will not stir up the whistling wind or make engine noises. How can they be easily detected? He stood in the sky, waving his hands elegantly and casually like a conductor, and the huge ice and snowstorms were slowly torn apart. The dagger dragging the red tail quickly flew towards it. A moment later, the terrifying power that captured people's hearts broke out. The red light was more dazzling than the sun that had just risen on the horizon. Zhang Yi was very familiar with this attack method. Even if he encountered this kind of attack, he had to escape into the void to avoid it. However, Morana must have his own defense methods. But Demon God B has thousands of such daggers. Demon God B slowly tore Morana's defense step by step. He is not a mechanical life form, so he will not fight at all costs. Morana is very strong and has terrible abilities, so he needs to be treated with caution. The trapped beast still fights to avoid the possibility of being counterattacked before death. Anyway, in the current situation, everything is under his control. Smart, really smart. Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh at the fighting style of Demon God B. This is somewhat similar to his fighting style. The intelligence system called up all the information about Zhang Yi. Those thousands of daggers are completely luxury goods. Each one can burst out with power comparable to that of a small or medium-sized god of death of love within a certain range. But in order to resist this power, Morana must constantly maintain a high level of mental tension, which requires a huge amount of energy. If they continue to fight like this, it won't be long before Demon God B doesn't even need to make a move. She will be killed by the exploding dagger due to excessive energy loss. It's already very strong to be able to hold on until this time. The Queen of the Temple of the Gods is indeed worthy of her reputation. If it were me, I'm afraid I would have escaped long ago. This pervert is completely unbeatable. Zhang Yi's words were not false. The space storage that he was most proud of was not good enough in front of Demon God B. But now, he has watched enough of the show. If he doesn't take action, I'm afraid Morana will really die here. Zhang Yi said to Lu Kuran. Kuran, can you try to contact Morana? He wanted to save people and even cooperate with Morana in the battle, but the premise was to communicate with the other party. Lu Kuran said, "This is very simple, brother. I have opened the channel for you. You can communicate normally." The energy fluctuations at the scene were too large, affecting normal communication, but with Lu Kuran, an Epsilon-level super engineer, this problem can certainly be easily solved. Zhang Yi immediately tried to contact Morana, and sure enough, he was able to contact her soon. Hello. Ms. Morana, I am Chaos from Huashu. I am here to support you. At this time, on the land covered by the blizzard, Morana's body was covered with frost armor, holding a huge ice-blue sickle in her right hand, and ice and snowstorms were whistling around her body. After her absolute zero was cracked, she instantly fell into a disadvantage in the battle with Prados. But her ability is more than that. As the most powerful existence in Fremons, she is both offensive and defensive, and she is not a character that can be killed so easily. She had relied on her strong fighting will and her skillful ability that had been tempered for thousands of times to delay with Prados until now. She didn't expect reinforcements in her heart. Only the weak would pray for help from others. At this moment, even though she was in a disadvantageous combat environment, she was still thinking about how to break the situation. But the prerequisite was that she had to make her absolute zero work again. That was her strongest killer move. Even if she failed in the first attack because she didn't expect Prados's powerful mind ability, it didn't mean that she had no chance. Next time, as long as she could get in touch with Prados' body one step ahead and release her explosive skills, she could directly destroy his body. Even the indestructible armor of the demon body would become extremely fragile under absolute zero. But unfortunately, Prados didn't give her such an opportunity again. Just dealing with a constantly harassing self-destructing dagger and the powerful mind bombs was already a headache for Morana. But she didn't fall into despair, let alone doubt herself. What's this? After the end of the world, how many desperate situations did she experience this time? When she went deep into the Arctic ice field to hunt mutant monsters, she was once dragged into the deep sea of 10,000 meters and almost became food in the monster's belly. The most dangerous experience was even at the beginning of her end of the world, in the darkest Macacan prison in Fremons, where she killed hundreds of prisoners with her bare hands without any food or heating methods, and used their bodies to survive. The current situation is not the most dangerous crisis for her. However, it does give her a headache. At this time, the communication device that had lost contact with the base actually heard a human voice again. Although it was translated by the intelligence system, it can still be heard that it was a somewhat playful man's voice. Morana's face was terribly cold, and the voice coming from the communication device was also like a cold wind blowing across the face. Chaos in Huashu country? The intelligence system called up all the information about Zhang Yi, a person with dual attribute abilities of time and space. His time ability is suspected to be able to predict the future, but the details are unknown. His spatial ability is to store things in different spaces, travel through space, and use space doors as a means of defense to divert energy attacks. The arrival of reinforcements made Morana slightly relieved. Help me to deal with him. After the matter is done, I will give you corresponding rewards. Although Zhang Yi had negotiated with Bodaga on this issue, he knew that Morana had more say than Bodaga, so he emphasized it again. Your Fremons' senior management invited me here and have already negotiated the conditions. If we win, 90% of the spoils on the battlefield will belong to me, including the demon god bee machine and the origin. Bodaga's eyes instantly burst into a cold light. She charged in the front, but she didn't expect that the rear would so easily transfer all the benefits to others. But soon, she thought about the current situation and knew that the three giants were helpless choices. Because judging from the situation, her chances of winning were indeed not big enough, and even escaping would be extremely difficult. She said in a deep voice, "Let's win first. If you win, you will get everything you deserve." At least, she knew that Zhang Yi appeared here, and she, Alexei, and Giselberg would not die. Okay. Now you listen to me. Find a way to use your absolute zero to seal Demon God Bee again, and leave the rest to me, Zhang Yi said. Morana said, the distance is too far, and the coverage range of my absolute zero is a radius of 3 kilometers from the center of itself. He has been prepared for my ability, and it is difficult to use this trick on him again. So, I need your assistance, Morana said to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi thought about it, nodded and said, okay. Wait for me for a moment. It was easy for him to close the distance. Zhang Yi opened the dimensional door and quickly crossed in the direction of Morana. As he approached, he naturally attracted the attention of Plato's. Reinforcements? In Plato's eyes, Zhang Yi's figure kept disappearing, and then he approached here the next moment. Space-related abilities. He stretched out his right hand towards Zhang Yi from a distance and activated his invisible telepathic abilities. But the next moment nothing happened. Zhang Yi, who protected himself with the myriad things in the universe, seemed to still be in this world. But in fact, there were dozens of dimensional barriers between him and the real world. Pratos's telepathic abilities could not directly control Zhang Yi's body. Pratos quickly received the report from the onboard intelligence, and all of Zhang Yi's information was uploaded to his brain. So he put his hands together and rubbed them twice, as if he was rubbing a snowball, and the light between his hands twisted strangely. A ball of air bombs that had been compressed to the limit appeared in his palms, and then he aimed the air bomb at the direction Zhang Yi was traveling and projected it directly. Zhang Yi's dimensional door had just opened, and suddenly the time-second hand swung wildly in his left eye, and he felt a huge threat approaching. The steps that were originally intended to step into the dimensional door stopped instantly. In the area where he was about to appear, the space was like a rag that had been rubbed hard by someone, and it was strongly distorted. It wasn't that the space was affected. The space barrier in reality was extremely solid. But it was a field generated by extremely powerful energy, which affected the light in the entire space. Without any sound, the distortion of the light quickly recovered. But Zhang Yi knew that once that kind of power hit him, even with the protection of Sinluo Wanxiang, his dimensional door would be damaged a lot. The ability of time attribute? I didn't expect that these two abilities would appear in one individual at the same time. It's really rare. Platos looked at Zhang Yi with a changed look, extremely curious, as if he was looking at a rare beast. So, what about this move? He was even too lazy to look at the situation on Mirana's side, but turned his eyes to look at Zhang Yi. Then he rubbed his hands twice, and soon another air bullet was shot at the area where Zhang Yi was at an extremely fast speed. One air bullet after another for Platos. This kind of attack was as easy as playing marbles. But the air bullet fell into the air, and its lethality could be judged just from the degree of distortion of the light. Zhang Yi's eyes flashed with bright light, and he kept moving away. But in an instant, those air bombs covered all the space around him, and Zhang Yi could not escape from the area they covered immediately. Silently, they exploded in an instant. The compressed air bombs burst out with dull and terrible energy, covering a huge space. Zhang Yi had no better way, but he was always good at defense. The myriad things suddenly shrank to a range of 100 meters outside his body, and invisible forces rushed from all directions, hitting his dimensional door hard. Zhang Yi saw the door shattered, and 3 doors disappeared directly due to energy overload under this attack. However, compared with his 3,000 doors, this loss was not painful. Sure enough, it's very strong. Zhang Yi raised his right hand, and the divine refining turned into a big gun, aiming at Pratos and bursting out with a bang. The dark star-piercing cannon passed through the space between the two and arrived in front of Pratos in an instant. Pratos looked at Zhang Yi with some surprise, as if he didn't expect that his attack was so easily resisted by the other party. When facing the star-piercing cannon full of murderous intent, he regained his calmness and just pushed forward with one hand. The powerful telekinesis ability directly formed a transparent barrier in the air, which made the speed of the star cannon slow down, and finally it became slower and slower, stopping hundreds of meters in front of Pratos. He flicked his finger lightly, and the trajectory of the star cannon was obviously deviated, and it shot to the side. A moment later, a huge dark sphere rose from the ground in the distance, leaving a regular round pit on the ground. Zhang Yi would not fight for a long time. He knew how strong Pratos was, so he would not run over to fight him head-on. Taking advantage of the moment of the fight, he had already opened the dimensional door and rushed to the direction where Morana was. Pratos frowned. Are you here to save people? The ability of the space system is really interesting. But I can't let you escape so easily. His eyes began to become serious. Facing 2 powerful enemies at the same time, and both of them have very special abilities, he would not be allowed to be careless because he is stronger than the other party. He held his hands in midair, one hand above and one hand below, and his telekinesis gathered in his palms, forming an extremely powerful telekinesis wave. Then he raised the telekinesis-turned cannonball high towards the ice and snow tornado that covered the area. The telekinesis bullet was suspended in midair, and Platos pointed his finger forward fiercely. Go. The fist-sized telekinesis bullet whoosh, and instantly reached the huge ice and snow tornado that was as big as a mountain. Boom boom. Like an avalanche, the huge ice and snow wall was directly shattered, and the ice and snow splashed in all directions. Mirana's defense was blasted away by Platos. He didn't want to cause any more trouble, so he decided to eliminate all unstable factors as soon as possible. Beside him, dozens of self-destructing daggers shot in that direction. At this time, Zhang Yi also came to Mirana's side. It was not the first time the two met, but they were not very familiar with each other. Zhang Yi grabbed Mirana's arm and said to her, "I'll take you closer to him, and then you use your power to seal him. I have a way to kill him." Mirana sensed the arrival of those dangerous attacks, but she didn't speak. Instead, her eyes burst into a deep blue light. All the frost around her was condensing. The earth, the sky, and all the ice and snow belonged to her. She built a high ice and snow barrier one by one, layer by layer, and in an instant she built a city of ice and snow on the earth. The thick walls stretched for hundreds of kilometers. This was her most powerful means of defense. Even the shock wave of the god of death of love could hardly destroy all the ice walls from the front at once. After using this move, her face became paler, but she had to do it. Otherwise, she would not be able to survive the attack of dozens of self-destructing daggers. Zhang Yi held Mirana's wrist. He knew that even if he used Space Shuttle, he could not avoid this attack. Because when the self-destructing dagger burst out energy, the speed of the shock wave that swept across instantly would overwhelm the space point where they appeared next time. Mirana's ice and snow walls made him look sideways, but he knew that this would not be enough to completely block it. He knew how terrifying this thing was. Sure enough, in the distance, across the huge ice and snow walls, he saw groups of red suns rising. Through the ice, the suns looked even bigger, but soon the scorching energy swept over. "It's useless to do this, follow me,"